Hi everyone. I hope you can all hear me okay. If you hang on, sorry. Yeah, hi everyone. Welcome to the Inside Out Support Wales series of webinars. This webinar is focusing on self and just kind of showcasing the support we offer for individuals that want to go self-employed, that have a conviction or post-release from prison, and how we kind of navigate that journey around. Tonight we've got one of our founders and our co-directors, Mark Lewis, who is our self-employment mentor. He tends to get the referrals directly who want to go self-employed, and as Mark's a chartered accountant, he's able to give really good insight into how that can work. I will hand over to Mark now. We have got a chat function on the right, so if there's any questions, anyone's got anything they would like to kind of discuss, anything they want us to go back on, we welcome questions at the end. Please don't hesitate to just kind of pop your questions in the chat box. Are you okay to continue, Mark?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Hi everyone. As Chris said, my name's Mark Lewis. I'm one of the co-directors and founders of Inside Out Support Wales. We help with supporting people with convictions into self-employment, further education and employment. My speciality is the self-employment side of things. As Chris mentioned, I take a lot of the referrals directly. Quite often they're still in prison when they're referred to us. So my job is to help them through the process of looking into becoming self-employed when they're released. Probably without further ado, I might as well start with the slideshow to demonstrate probably the basic things that people need to address when they're thinking of going self-employed. So here, basically, I've titled this "The Boring Stuff" because really it's the what you'd call the more straightforward sort of fiddly bits of going self-employed. The first thing really, I believe, is important, and this can be covered before somebody starts. Before somebody is released from prison, is they can quite often start on their business plan well in advance of being released. There are facilities within the prison to help them do this. We ourselves offer the service to help them to do that. But there are also other people within the prison who can help with this. Quite often we say, well, the saying at the top there is "fail to prepare to fail." Basically, I think it's very important when somebody has an inkling of a plan for going self-employed once they're out of prison. Putting the plan in place early on is vitally important and can lead to big dividends further down the line. A good business plan can really help focus an idea that someone has, and can also show to other people that you're serious about this, and it really does demonstrate that you've thought things through. The next point is everyone's favourite person, the tax man. This is something that also needs to be addressed fairly soon. On your road down the self-employment path. You'll need to be registered for self-assessment, at least if you're self-employed, and tax returns are done on a yearly basis. The tax year runs to the 5th of April each year, with the self-assessment tax return needing to be done by the 31st of January following the year round. So it's really important that people are aware of this and get these things sorted out as soon as possible. It might be a bit optimistic, but you do need to register for that when your business turnover hits 85,000 per year. we might as well mention that, because you might as well be optimistic about how you're going to do once you've set up as self-employed. Self-employment does encompass the option to go limited with your business. It's a fairly complicated area, but just a brief overview. A limited company gives you a slightly different tax regime that you have to interact with. The company is a legally distinct entity from yourself. So, and when people talk about incorporation, that's what they mean is forming a limited company that you yourself will administer and will be the director of and the shareholder of. And you will be registered on Companies House and pay corporation tax. You'll still need to be registered for self-assessment whilst a director of a limited company. Bank accounts, obviously, these are things that need to be considered, and particularly with people with convictions, it is an important point, because we have a lot of stories of how people with convictions going out trying to set up their own business quite often find obstacles in their way, and opening a business bank account is sometimes, for some reason, one of those things. There is no legal reason for a bank to refuse a person with a conviction a bank account, but at the same time, the law still does allow for banks to turn people down for bank accounts without having to give a reason. And obviously, in that case, they may well decide that they're not going to provide a bank account and not give you a reason as to why they've taken that decision. There are other options, and I don't know, maybe Chris might be able to elaborate on them. There are other options for opening a bank account if you have a conviction. There are lots of banks now that are set up on apps, and they can quite often be a lot less stringent than the high street banks. Well, I don't mean stringent as in they don't go through the proper processes. I think they're a lot more democratic in the type of person that they'll accept. So quite often there are bank accounts now that do cater specifically for people who potentially have poor credit ratings.
Thanks, Mark. In terms of, sorry, Mark, do you mind just going back to the last slide? I'll probably elaborate on it a little bit. In terms of a person that's been to prison, it can have a massive effect on your credit rating. Not just the fact you've been sentenced, just the fact that you've not been able to kind of arrange payment for bills. So you end up with late payment charges, with defaults that you might not be aware of. Obviously, some things are kind of up in there, and you're unable to make payment on them. So you can end up with adverse credit without knowing. And when you come around to open a bank account, you kind of get told no because of such and such, and you might not have a clue about it. So there are several accounts that are kind of geared up for this. There's Cash Plus, there's Monzo, there's Sterling, that aren't so much based off your credit history, and they are very, very easy to open as long as you've got ID, which is paramount. You do need a government ID to open any one of these accounts, but they are easy to open. They're at a cost of anywhere from £50 to £75 to open an account, and then you have charges on that account. But it is probably one of the quickest routes for someone with poor credit to kind of open that type of an account. And then from that account, you're able to kind of run that account in a positive way, and then you can again go on to the major high street banks and get your NatWest account or your HSBC from there. Cheers, Mark.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Chris. As Chris said, there are new products coming onto the market all the time, and a lot of them are specifically aimed at helping people to recover from bad credit histories. So I would recommend the path to going self-employed has quite a few obstacles in it, but I wouldn't lose heart when something like, if the first bank that you go to try and open an account turns you down. don't let that be a reason to lose heart and give up on your dream. Obviously, once you got your bank account set up, once you're all set up for self-assessment, and maybe if you've set up your company, the next step is thinking about your bookkeeping. Obviously, if you can get this organised as soon as possible, and I'm saying this as an accountant, it's always beneficial if from the very start you're set up to keep your records in a tidy manner. HMRC require you to keep your records for up to 6 years, 6 years or 5 years from the filing date of the self-assessment, which is the 31st of January after your year end. The general rule is you should be keeping all your business receipts if you want to be claiming expenses against your business income to calculate your tax. Again, there's products coming onto the market all the time that make it easier and easier to keep your books, and particularly the cloud-based bookkeeping software has come on in leaps and bounds in the last few years, and that makes, from my point of view as an accountant, I can say that it does make it a lot easier to be keeping your records with these new products. The QuickBooks and the Xero and Sage, those types of applications are all a lot more user friendly now and work off a smartphone. So yeah, I think that's the end of my bit. Hopefully we'll have a bit of lived experience now in the next bit from Sobanan, Pratik and Chris. If I can just jump back to the main screen.
I'd like to introduce you all to a friend of mine called Sobanan. And Sobanan and Pratik have both set up their own CICs, and I just thought I would hopefully they can give us insight into their journey and how their self-employment journey.
So can you hear us? Is that all right? Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. Okay. So our self-employment journey was sort of like out of prison. Like when we were in prison, like our intention was to start a business, right? Like we're co-defendants and we had this sort of like mentality that we wanted to utilize sort of like this relationship we cultivated for something positive. And like one of the biggest things was that we were willing to sort of try and fail. And I think that's a big thing when you're coming out of prison, when you're trying to start a business. It's like we started off doing digital marketing and business development, and that was the limited company we set up. And that sort of allowed us to get a taste of like what business was and like what being entrepreneurial and what entrepreneurship was. And like this was like, I guess, the starting point, because once you start that journey, you realize like a lot of the assumptions that people hold about having their own business or sort of what it takes to start a business, they're sort of like, it's not really like that in reality, and you need to sort of experience it to understand how you cope, because some people aren't accustomed to, say, taking risks or like, for example, like having to lead yourself day to day, if that makes sense. Like some people prefer to be managed or prefer to have that sort of structure in their day, and it's finding out what works for you. And as time goes on, I'm sure people...
Yeah, as time goes on, you probably do come across lots of obstacles. Some of the obstacles can be money, right? And as Sobanan said, you might not be accustomed to be taking a risk. So when you take that risk of starting your own business, being self-employed, you really want to make sure you have a net for yourself. So a runway of money, essentially, that just in case if you don't get the clients that you think you would, business doesn't go as well as you thought. And now in the climate we live in, COVID, there's lots of external factors that can really act as obstacles. So having that sort of runway would really would help you, and it would ease your mind as well. So you'd be able to focus and essentially lead yourself rather than get lost in all the external things that get in your way.
Yeah, personal finance is a big one, because I think until you sort yourself out personally, it's very difficult to sort of reflect that onto a business, because a lot of the same skills are required both ways. So once you get to that stage and once you get out there, don't be scared to ask for help. And I think this is a big thing. Like as ex-offenders, that you have to be willing to be quite open about you having that lived experience, but also your willingness to go to others where you feel your knowledge falls short, whether that's in accounts, whether that's in sales, marketing, whatever it is. And it's like people are always willing to help, but you first have to, like, it's a lot about relationships. Like, business isn't really about like intellect or skill or like your ability to, perform well at something. It's more about the relationships you cultivate, like the teams that you build, and whether you're able to sort of strengthen those teams and use those teams to build something together. And I think that's where a lot of emphasis should be placed on sort of building your social capital, building positive relationships in your life that reflect and are conducive of the businesses you want to build, but also the life that you want to lead.
And it's like that saying goes, your network is your net worth. And that's a really important thing. Being able to realize and actually being real with yourself to say, okay, there's a couple of things that I won't be able to do where my skills fall short, where I might need someone to kind of help me. That's really important. And sometimes that's the hardest thing to actually recognize, because we all feel like we can all do it ourselves, but we are talking about self-employment, but there is a big team aspect in starting your business and making sure it gets to the next stage.
And utilizing the network you may have built while you were in prison is particularly effective. Like, we still work with practitioners who we worked with while we were in prison, and like that relationship you cultivate with these practitioners it's lasting, and it's quite good because it's seen you grow from pre-transition to post-transition. So it allows those relationships to be filled with trust. So utilizing those relationships and coming out of prison, like being aware that even though the obstacles that might exist, say, for example, with the banks, they're all able, you can overcome these. Like, using the internet is like, it's a gift. Like, you can use Tide, for example, to like register your business for free, as well as get a bank account all for free. And like, this is just reduces your headache. So just be aware that if you go looking, all the help is there.
And there is a lot of help, right? Especially for ex-offenders. There's places like Princess Trust, there's scholarships, there's ways where, because of our lived experience, we can get access to mentors, people like our organization, people like Chris's organization. There is a lot of help out there, and it's just about seeking the right help. And it sounds weird, but it makes you feel like, as an ex-offender, I don't know using the word, that we have an unfair advantage because we have access to these mentorship schemes and these scholarships and things like that. And that's just another thing that you should really keep in mind when picking a business idea. We don't want to just give you advice about actually your day-to-day runnings and our journey. A big part of it was picking the right idea and finding out where we actually have an unfair advantage, so we could actually do better in that industry. So, for example, we worked with a prison reform company, right? Whilst we were inside, we liked the work that they were doing, helping, giving back, building a community, and we saw the value in that, but we needed to put our own sort of spin on it and our philosophies that have helped us. So that is a business where we have an unfair advantage because we've obviously been there, we've got the experience, and we're able to help. So that's just an example of how that's quite useful when picking a business idea.
And probably the final thing that I want to say is just remember, like, everything is freely available out there to learn. Like, on the internet, you can absolutely learn any degree, any sort of anything you want to know, like on YouTube, Google. Like, these are all places where information is there. Like, our first business idea came from a YouTube video. We watched a YouTube video on how essentially we have an unfair advantage as digital natives in digital marketing, and we saw that opportunity and took it. Like, our CIC came from us watching 4 years prior to being sent to prison, watching a YouTube video on an ex-offender, a murderer in America who was serving a sentence, who'd written a financial literacy program because he'd learned that from an older white inmate while he was serving his life sentence. Like, these things, these pockets of knowledge or these pockets of inspiration are readily available and freely out there. It's just a matter of looking and knowing how to look. And yeah, thank you.
Any questions?
Cheers. Thanks for that. I just want to kind of add my little bit on top. In terms, my self-employment journey is probably testament to exactly what Sobhan and Pratik are saying, where I've been extremely fortunate to be able to draw on the expertise of others and kind of reach out and say, I'm very fortunate. One of my co-directors is a chartered accountant, which comes in very handy. But even just down to kind of Sobhan and Pratik, we've met through a business way, and I reach out to them for help. So a lot of people, there was a question in the group about how do you kind of people with ideas that maybe aren't realistic. And some of the business that you there's a million different ideas when you're in prison about setting up a business, all sorts of grand ideas. And it's about when you get out, kind of the best advice I can possibly give is research the business that you want to open up. And there's not a limit on the amount of research you can do. And the more you research, the more you'll find out whether it's viable or it's not viable, and whether it's going to make you profit or it's not going to make you profit, or if it's going to be doable or not. But I would say a lot of you can come and apply to a legal world. You can buy a product and market a product and sell a product and sell it at a profit, at a 10% profit. You're in business. All of a sudden, you're a businessman. You just have to kind of make that product be a legitimate product and a legal product. I think for myself, as I said, I was fortunate to have a good network and be able to reach out. And I think I'm not shy now of telling people I need help. I think one thing with self-employment, you definitely need help. You can't do it all by yourself as much as you might think you can. It can be a very lonely world and very difficult if you have that kind of attitude. And there's so many people, not just organizations, but you'll find people in your life that you can ask for help and support in different aspects of your self-employment journey. Also, the fact it's a long journey and you're not going to set up a business and 6 months later be mega successful. It's going to take a lot of hard work and a lot of, it's not sleepless nights, but working till burning the candle at the wrong end, as I say. I think that's kind of it in terms of my journey. We welcome any questions. Sorry, we're just looking through the questions. Alex, I've seen you put like some really, really good questions there in terms of other support organisations. And as we're based in Wales, Sober and Pratic are based in London. In Wales, we kind of found there's a lot of organisations that support in employment, education, well-being, but there weren't many that supported self-employment. There isn't a pot of gold out there that are going to give you money towards your business idea. You kind of have to be self-funded if you do have a business idea, and that's very difficult for an ex-offender or someone that's just been recently released. But in terms of Inside Out Wales, we kind of support more the advocacy around going self-employed, kind of where to kind of go for a loan, because there aren't any grants as per se for self-employed. There are certain schemes with Department for Work and Pensions that will kind of benefit schemes that will keep paying your benefits while you develop your idea, and it gives you that kind of space to kind of move forward. But in terms of support agencies for self-employment, I'm not aware of many in Wales. I don't know if it's the same in London. Sober and Pratic.
Prince's Trust is really good. Like Prince's Trust is, especially if you're 18 to 30 and unemployed otherwise, they're really good. Higher education institutions, so like if you have applied for like Open University or just university in general, they're really good places to get grants. Yeah, competitions and challenges are good, especially if you've got a good idea that you can like you can articulate it in a video or articulate it in like a post or stuff. There are pots of money out there, but Hardman Directory is generally the place to look. Because I've seen like just ex-offenders. There's loads of money out there for ex-offenders, like Longford Trust. I wouldn't have known about unless Chris had told me, but there's loads of like stuff out there if you're just willing to have a look.
I think the self-employment route for somebody that's kind of been released from jail is daunting, because like, how am I going to do it? Like, how? I think by kind of our examples, especially Sovereign and Pratik, that people that have left and done it kind of showed you that pathway is possible. And do you know what I mean, in terms of like, how are you going to put it together? Because there's all these questions that you have fired at you when it comes to your business idea, and people are going to ask you these questions very quick, and they're going to expect quick and prompt answers. Like, how are you going to do it? What's your idea? Where are you going to be based? How are you going to sell your product? So I think all these things you kind of need, as Mark said, a robust business plan. The benefits of it are paramount, and in terms of why you're you know, if you've got spare time, which a lot of prisoners have got, you got a lot of time in yourselves, that you'll be mulling over your idea and mulling over, oh, what am I going to do, how am I going to do it, where am I going to sell. They're kind of already at this stage. It's just that final push and that support network, even down to registering a company can be difficult. Or it can be, you can get a bit anxious going on to company's house, and then, you know, you might put your name in, someone else has got your name, and you really wanted that name, that was the only name you wanted for your business, and all of a sudden somebody else has got it. So there are a few kind of, you know, pitfalls that you'll find, but generally I think as long as you're focused, you'll get there in the end.
That's quite a good question. The next one.
Would you like to take a crack, Sobernan?
Like, so what we did when we were inside, right, is like utilize, like, so education stuff are really helpful for this. Like, if you tell someone in education that, look, like, I want to start a business when I get out, like, do you mind helping me search for XYZ information? Like, more often than not, they will be helpful. And also, like, libraries are really good, like, as long as you know where you're looking. But like, librarians, like, we were library orderlies at Guys Marshall, like, we would always be quite, like, open to helping people find the necessary information. So it's just asking people, but also knowing, like, people do have access to, like, it's having good relationships with staff, right, and being able to access information by doing it through a legitimate means.
And newspapers is really good. What businesses, what industries are becoming innovative, which ones are getting affected by any like current affairs. So just keeping up to date with the news, and especially the business news. I know it sounds self-explanatory, but if you actually make a habit of trying to get that information every week, whether it's from the TV or the newspaper, you can actually get a lot of information as your time goes.
Yeah, asking friends and family as well, because he used to send me business plans and stuff to send them into when I was in DCAT, and that was like helpful because it was just having someone researching stuff and then being able to look at it and think about it.
That was what I was going to say. Sobernan was for me, it was friends and family. I was able to, every phone call I had, I would ask somebody, can they Google this, or can you find out about this, or can you send me in this? So it was, depending on your kind of network outside, that was paramount for me. And a lot of people don't know that went into set their own businesses up, it was their partners. They were constantly bugging their partners to find out information. And as you get to DCAT, as you get towards the end of your sentence, you have home leaves where you can go, you know, go on your home leave, and you're at home for 5 days, and you know, you'll spend 3 out of those 5 days, you'll spend researching your idea. You've got access to internet, you've got access to everything that you need. Then so you're ready on release to kind of set up. At the end of the webinar, I'm going to leave our emails there. So should anyone have any more further questions or anything you'd like to ask that you might pop up after, please feel free to drop myself or Mark an email, or Sobernan and Pratik. I'll leave your emails in there as well. Feel free to drop us an email if you've got anyone that you know that's thinking of going self-employed. In regards to your last question, Alex, for myself, I think I didn't work in the sector that I'm now self-employed in. So I think it would be advisable. I think, you know, of course it would be, you know, it's experience, but I've found by kind of throwing yourself in at the deep end, you kind of learn your trade very quickly. I don't know if it's the same for you, Sobernan and Pratik. I don't know.
Yeah, like so the CIC work, I feel like we did get experience. Like, we were particularly effective at it because we'd like basically had a close relationship with someone who essentially had a similar agency, and like that gave us a lot of insight. With the digital marketing stuff, we felt we were competent purely because like we'd grown up around social media and stuff growing up. But like certain businesses, I would definitely say like it would be a good idea for, because like if you want to get into stuff like construction and stuff, like it would probably be a good idea to look at what's required on a construction site, or like property is another good example. Like a property has a lot of paperwork and stuff, and a lot of guys want to be property developers or they want to be property managers. But if they've got experience within that area, then it allows that transition to be a lot smoother, and you build up the contacts without necessarily like making an effort to. It's like getting paid to research a business, essentially.
Yeah, one shoe doesn't fit all, so it depends on what the business is and if you need particular skills to actually progress in that industry. It would be a good idea if that's relevant.
Yeah, I do think. I think sometimes I think volunteering in the kind of industry you want to go into can help massively as well if you're able. But sometimes it's all about personal circumstances and whether a person's able to volunteer. You know, sometimes it's a lot to ask somebody if you've got bills and stuff like that. Do you have the time and the flexibility in order to volunteer your time? But I think if you can get paid employment in the sector you want to go into, it's invaluable. But thanks a lot for your questions, Alex, and I hope to speak to you soon. Sobran and Pratik, do you want to put your emails in the chat?
Yeah.
I'd like to thank everybody for taking the time out on this Thursday humid evening, and please feel free to have a look. We've got some more webinars coming up tomorrow on budgeting advice, and we've got another one on Thursday on positive disclosure and how to disclose your convictions positively to an employer, prospective employer, etc. So please feel free. We'll drop a link in the chat for the next webinars and look forward to seeing you all there. Thanks a lot to Sobran and Pratik for taking the time out this evening as well to kind of tell the.
No, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Worries. And I'll speak to you all soon.